I mean, you lived through that year as well, didn't you? What do you want me to say? It's a bit shit, wasn't it? Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my annual video where I check in with YouTube about how last year was, how I'm doing, and what my plans, goals, etc. are for the coming year, which is just about the only video I make anymore. Now, the other day I came back from my brother and his girlfriend's flat where I've been spending for Christmas and New Year's, and I couldn't sleep the first night back. I'm not really sure why, but I ended up getting back up, and I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I was watching the videos that I posted last year, and I started with last year's year in review. Kind of reminded me that I was going to make one, but there were three sort of main things that came from it. One, I really wanted to go back and give myself from last year a hug, because I think he needed it. You know, having watched it back, I forgot quite how raw some of it was. Number two, I was quite proud of what I have accomplished since, how I've changed. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely been a shit show at times, and you know, on a global scale it's been a shit show, but I've made the best of it that I can, and I think I did alright. Spoilers. Number three, I'm really glad that I got rid of that hair. It's like half purple and then half like bluey silvery kind of colour. So where do I start? 2020, what a fucking year. It probably makes sense to start with last year's video and where I was at, which is generally not good. As you may have guessed from that video, holy shit man, like I really put it all out there. I think some of the stuff that I talked about in that video I was still realising, processing, you know, some of the stuff, for example, in terms of, you know, not feeling like the driving force, feeling like I was just kind of passive, was stuff that I had only really realised like when I was up with my parents over Christmas, when I was chatting to my dad about stuff, and you know, I wasn't in the best place, you know, socially, mentally. I was just about to start a new job, so I was quite stressed and quite anxious about that. Am I going to do well enough? Am I going to fit in? All of that kind of stuff. And in a lot of ways I wasn't necessarily helping myself. My anxiety isn't necessarily my fault, but the way that I deal with it is my responsibility. Right through to February, March time, you know, there was a lot that I was struggling with, and I don't want to be insensitive and I don't want to be that guy, and I hate it when people are that guy, because I've seen a lot of it over the past like 8 months. But I think my year would have been very different had it not been for the lockdown, and I actually think some of the stuff that I achieved, some of the stuff that I was super proud of from last year, was a direct result of the lockdown and how I was able to take that situation and be like, okay, this is what's happening, this is what I'm going to do. Within the first week of working from home, I was like, I'm going to spend my lunch breaks working on music. I'm going to, you know, spend every evening that I can working on music because I don't have to commute anymore. I was able to put together stuff that was miles ahead of where I'd been in the past because I was dedicating so much more time to it. And it really is that simple. And I think on a personal note, it pushed me to be more independent. I did end up going up and living with my parents for a month or so, which was lovely, and I've got into a relationship, and I spent a lot of time in the second half of the year with Layla, and I spent a lot of time in the second half of the year with my brother and his girlfriend Jenny, and I love being around people. I'm still a very social person. It's not like I'm gonna fuck off to the mountains and live with the sheep or anything, but going from the situation where I struggled over the weekends towards the end of 2019, I hated Fridays because I wasn't going to see another person till Monday morning when I was back in the office at work, you know, and I hated being alone like that, to now being at a point where, you know, I was in lockdown, and the first lockdown I saw one or two people because like I had some colleagues come and visit to drop off a birthday present and that kind of thing, but they were at the door. But I didn't have a support bubble, you know, we didn't really get to that point, I don't think. And then, you know, I went up to live with my parents instead, so for the majority of 2 months I was on my own in the flat, and I wasn't going out. You know, I'd go out twice a week, once to the shop and once to the bins. The change within that 3 months to go from struggling through a weekend on my own to weeks at a time without seeing anyone, it is crazy, and it means that, you know, I'm so much more comfortable with my own company. I'm so much more able to be independent. We're just going into lockdown 3 as I'm recording this, and I'm not really phased. I very much empathise for other people, and I'm not trying to flex or be like, oh, I don't care about lockdown, but I've gone from being someone who would dread the idea of that for a week to someone who was able to, you know, make the best of it for a couple months. Which I think is pretty cool. I spent a lot of that time as well working on an EP, which I then also spent a lot of the time towards the end of the year working on. And I think one of the main positives coming out of 2020 for me is that development musically. I'm not amazing. You know, I'm not expecting to top the charts anytime soon, or even necessarily be able to release very much anytime soon. But I went from one song complete with vocals from 2019 and all of the years before to making, 7 songs within 2020 with vocals, and they weren't amazing, they weren't the best. Some of them I may never release. Certainly there's only one that's being released at the moment, but to go from I can't make anything, everything that I'm putting together just sounds rubbish, these things I'm not able to mesh them, I'm not able to understand where I'm going wrong, to then being like, yep, I was strongly considering / planning during the second half of the year being able to release a 5-song EP in 2020, and I had one completed song before 2020, and that to me is growth. Now, they're not all amazing. There's some of them that I simply can't release because I can't do the vocals well enough. My vocals are still very shaky, and so in the last couple of days I've actually reached out to my singing teacher Nick, because he's doing some virtual sessions which I have no idea what they're going to be like or how good they're going to be, but I'm going to give them a go because I like Nick. He's a cool guy. He was, you know, really great in terms of singing lessons in the past, and so I'll give the virtual sessions a go. If they don't work, then I'll just have to carry on working on other shit in the meantime, and then once things calm down a bit, hopefully I'll be able to go and have face-to-face sessions again. But yeah, I'm recording this on Tuesday the 5th of January. On Thursday the 7th of January, I'm releasing publicly my first ever song, which is crazy. It's called POA. It was originally track 4 of the EP Drive Yourself Forwards, which I've talked about already. I was working on a lot of last year. That was what I started working on in April and was hoping to release all the way through till November, December time. It was also going to be the lead single, so yeah, it is still going to be the lead single. I don't know when the rest of the EP will be released, if at all really. I can't at the moment because the vocals aren't good enough, as I said. It may be something that I come back to and re-record at a later date, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But the point is, I'm releasing my first ever song, which is incredible. It's still not perfect. In places the vocals still aren't where I would want them to be, but it's good enough and I'm fucking proud of it, you know. So yeah, if you haven't seen that yet and you're watching this, please do go and watch that because that would be really cool. Please be nice. Please. Just like, please. The whole kind of thing with Drag Yourself Forwards was I'd made a lot of projects where I'd planned them in the notes on my phone, I'd come up with the different songs, written lyrics for them, potentially made some rough artwork for it, started working on it, made drum beats, and then never finished them. And I was really sick of that. So yeah, I came up with this plan, this latest one, where I had some song titles, and I was like, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna stick with it, I'm not gonna come up with a different plan, I'm not gonna give up partway because it's difficult, I'm just gonna keep chipping away and I'm gonna make it. And while I've got to a point where I'm still kind of going, okay, I'm not gonna finish this now, I may at some point, and I've still got so much further than ever before to the point where I can release something. And so I think that's a fucking win. And that's actually where the EP name came from. I didn't have a name for it, I didn't know what to call it. And I was like, the motto for this is going to be, even if you're down, even if you're stuck in the mud, stick your fingers into the dirt and drag yourself forwards. And that's where Drag Yourself Forwards came from. So yeah. In terms of my mental health, what's that like? That's so typical, isn't it? I'm like, it doesn't matter to health, and then instantly distracted. It's pretty good. It's yeah. I had some therapy in 2020, which wasn't perfect. With that therapist, it was very much, you know, things were going fine, and then a thing happened, and then you're sort of dealing with the effects of that thing. So it's trying to pinpoint a situation or an event from when I was younger, and you know, trace everything back to that. I don't think that's as accurate. I think a lot of mine was more accumulated over time rather than being rooted in childhood, for example. But I was still able to talk about some really useful stuff. I was still able to explore some stuff, ask myself some questions that perhaps I hadn't really touched on before, and it was stressful, it was intense. I was doing it during the day at work, so I'd break for an hour, go have some therapy, and then come back, and sometimes it was quite difficult to switch back on, but it was good, it was useful, and there's still issues that I deal with, there's still stuff going on, but I'm certainly further along than I was in terms of understanding them, and sort of, not necessarily, you know, I'm fixed, but being able to kind of rationalize some aspects of it, and even just, you know, deal with things, process them. I did sign up for a second round of therapy, but then the guy didn't call, and it turned out that he wasn't working at that time. And then I would have had to have waited for a while, and in that time I kind of went, actually, I'm at a level now where I can deal with a lot of stuff, and if things do deteriorate, then I can potentially look into something at that time. I may proactively contact someone and be like, hey, I'd like to talk about some things. I may just carry on going. Seems to be going quite well so far for once. And then as and when, if stuff kicks off a bit again, then you know, I'll potentially investigate it at that time. So yeah, I haven't really done any, I mean, aside from music and lockdown, I haven't really done any of the kind of, I did this, I did that kind of thing. It's because I didn't fucking do anything because lockdown. But no, I think there's some stuff that I do want to talk about a little bit, and just sort of recap, I guess. Start of the year was rough. Stress. Trying to date someone when I wasn't ready and we weren't compatible, which isn't going to go well, surprisingly. And I'm not trying to throw any shade or anything to that person. We're still on good terms as far as I'm aware. Sometimes people just aren't compatible, and I know that, you know, even at my best, you know, there's aspects of me that would not be suitable for some people. For example, my anxiety and overthinking potentially limits who I can be with, because you know, I need certain things. But yeah, then obviously lockdown happened and music started happening, but after a while I did get quite lonely and it did get quite difficult. So I ended up going up to my parents, and I lived up there for, I think it was about 5 weeks in the end, in like May, June time, and that was lovely. It's the longest time I've spent with my parents in years. It's the longest time I've spent with them since I moved out, which would have been about 2 years earlier. So yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely spending time with them. It was strange. Definitely at times it was strange, because going from living in a flat on my own, especially living in a flat on my own in lockdown where I don't really go out, to then being in the Midlands with my parents who have a garden and a dog who needs walking and all of that kind of thing. It was different, but it was very nice, and I think, you know, it did a lot of good for my mental health at that point in the year particularly. I came back around the beginning of July, spent some time with my brother, which was really nice, and then after a little while started talking to me and Layla were friends as far back as 2019. We've been friends for a while, but we got a lot closer during 2020, and then in the summer started seeing each other quite regularly, and then started dating. And now can't fucking see each other because lockdown. Unfortunately, with lockdown, we can't see each other for a while, but it will be super nice when we do get to. So yeah, overall, it was difficult. It was a difficult year. It was a crazy year, but you already know that. But I think, you know, it was a year that oddly kind of means a lot to me. And I think, you know, it was a year of growth and learning as horrendously cliche as that sounds, I might throw up into my mug in a second if I keep saying shit like that, but it really was, and I am quite proud of where I am and how far I came, especially given that it was such a crazy year. There's still a lot to achieve. I haven't made New Year's resolutions this year. I want to keep making music, I want to make better music, I want to make more music, I want to be able to release music. I do want to make some more videos. I know I say this every time I make a video, but I genuinely, I do miss it, and I do enjoy it. I think the editing is just tedious a lot of the time. I know it sounds awful, but I can see that I've recorded 28 minutes for this, and I'm just like, that's 28 minutes that I've got to go through and cut down and edit, and it's just not always exactly what I want to be spending my time doing. And with some of the more, you know, there's things that maybe I'm like, oh, that would look really cool, but that I don't have the motivation to try and teach myself how to do some of that stuff, so then I end up with kind of content, and I'm not happy with that. People don't want to watch that, you know. I don't always know what to film, so hopefully I will make a few more videos this year. I do plan to make the mcvloglin awards. I did film it last year, but as I kind of just said, I never finished editing it because it was tedious. I think what I'm going to do, because we now have mcvloglin awards for 2020 as well, I'm going to do one video just sort of briefly going through both years, so that'll hopefully be coming
out in February.
And then yeah, hopefully I will do a bit more vlogging this year, as well as making more music. Be a very creative year, hopefully. Beyond that, I don't really know in terms of New Year's resolutions. I guess just put the same effort into 2021 as I did 2020, and just make it, you know, as good and as creative and as, I don't know what word to use, but just keep the momentum from 2020 going, because I think I did well. I think looking at the year in review 2019 and then thinking about the year 2020 that came just after that video, it's I would have expected from that video and how emotional and sad I was, I wouldn't have predicted to have been such a good and creative year. There's a lot to look forward to, I think. And it's obviously it's difficult. We've just gone into lockdown like the first week of 2021. Like, I think a lot of people are struggling, a lot of people are struggling for hope as well, but I think it's just about keeping on pushing, keeping on doing things that we love, and just, you know, keeping in mind all of the great things that are going to come afterwards. God, I'm so optimistic this year, fuck. To be fair, I bleached my hair while drunk, so it's a little bit wonky, but I bleached my hair just before New Year's, and I was like, yeah, I've got blonde hair, I'm ready for 2021. So we'll see how that goes. I did do a New Year's post going into 2020 where I was like, it's gonna be the best year, and in many ways, you know, it was great, but I think I kind of tempted fate, and then I did it again for 2021, so we'll see. What could possibly go wrong? I'm gonna wrap it up. I don't know how much of what I've shot is gonna make it into the final version, because we're at 33 minutes now, but I will make sure that this does get posted, and then the mcvloglin awards double gets posted as well. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, give it a good old like. Make sure to go and check out POA if you haven't already afterwards. It's under the name Dancing with Demons, because that's my musical stage name, which is cool. And yeah, fingers crossed I'll see you soon, and we will all have a lovely and enjoyable and creative and wonderful 2021. That said, I'm recording this on Tuesday the 5th of January. I had to fucking check. I've had a whole day at work working in payroll, and I just had to check what day it is. That actually really hurt. It's like trying to put a square block in a circular hole, which sounds like an innuendo, and I didn't really mean it to. Me and Layla started seeing each other quite regularly, and then ended up dating, which was very nice.